I can honestly say it's been a thought about moving back. I like the temperature is 40 degrees in Ohio. It was 61 out here today. Big difference. My windows are down. I was sending pictures to my family, laughing at them. I love this area. I love Missouri. I lived here for 5 years and knew Josh for a couple of those years. He was my college pastor, so it was a good time. We had a fun time doing college class together. Today we'll be in Matthew chapter 22, and we'll be in verse 34 through 38, and it's going to be on one of the great commandments. And this is originally a two-part series I had, but really if you get part one, part two would come naturally, because part one is love the Lord your God with all your heart. If you do that, it will be easy to love thy neighbor. You know what I'm saying? You can love your neighbor, not God, but if you love God, you will love your neighbor. So really, you can sum it all up in just one part. And for an introduction, I like to give just a summary of what happened prior to these section of verses, just because I think it gives it justice to what's happening here. And in this chapter, what's happening is there's two groups of people that do not like Jesus. It's the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Fun word. Anyways, what happened is these two groups, have you ever heard the saying, an enemy of an enemy is a friend? It was a Chinese proverb, and we do this today. We might not say it, but as human beings we do this. What happens is if we have an issue with somebody, odds are you know somebody else that has an issue with somebody, and you might not be friends, and you go up to that person and be like, hey, guess what? And you tell that person what happens, and you both kind of team up to attack that person. That's what's happening here in the Bible, is these two groups don't like each other, but they really don't like Jesus. So they're just like, hey, we have the same enemy here. Let's team up and try to trap Jesus. Because usually these guys were usually debating each other. But this one time they decided to work with each other. And on the verse prior to what we're going to be talking about today, in verse 33, it was the Sadducees had asked Jesus a question, and Jesus answered it, and it shocked everybody. In verse 33 it says, and when the multitude heard this, they were astonished at his doctrine. They were astonished at his teachings, and they could not believe what he said. And that's where we lead up to verses 34 through 38, and I will read that. But when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him, and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto them, Thou shalt love thy God, thy Lord, thy God, with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. All right, so he said that. So when the Pharisees heard what Jesus did to the Sadducees, they kind of had I would say a little powwow with each other, like the meeting of the minds. They heard that and they're like, hey, we got to do something about this. We gotta handle this Jesus situation. Okay, so they all gathered together, as we saw in 34. They all gathered together, and one of them, which was a lawyer, it's interesting. A lawyer, they picked a guy that was probably really good at speaking, was very intelligent, was very smart. A lawyer, they actually strategically thought this out. They're like, hey, a lawyer, he would be a good spokesman. Let's have him ask this question that we have for Jesus. And they asked him, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? It's so important to learn what his response is, because his response will dictate how we should live our everyday life. And once again, Jesus responded, and then we're going to break what his response is into little details. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. All right, we're going to study that very first section. You shall love thy Lord thy God with all your heart. With all your heart. When we read stuff like this, we tend to stop there. We should love thy Lord thy God with all your heart. Okay, stop. And that's it. We usually walk away from it. We don't really think of what it means to love him with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. We tend to think that that's all one thing. Like your heart, soul, mind. We tend to just group it in as being, but they all mean something different. Your heart means something different. Your mind means something different. And your soul is something different. And they all come together to create who you are. And that's what we're going to study. We're going to study about what does love, heart, soul, and mind mean. So when Jesus said, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God, the word love in this passage means agape love. Okay? And the reason why it's important to know what agape means is nowadays, especially in the group I talk to a lot, teenagers and college kids, is they use love for everything. I love those shoes. I love that car. I love that gum. I love that video game. I love my parents. I love my 18th boyfriend I had today or 18th girlfriend I had in the same day. They use the word love for everything. And it gets watered down. It's just like, okay, so you love that piece of gum the same as you love your parents. You love that piece of gum the same way, you love Jesus. There has to be a difference. So the meaning here is agape, which means a self-giving love, and applies not just a desire or feeling, but a decision of will to be committed to someone or something. Must be committed to someone or something. I wish I would have noticed that one part of the definition, because it would have been nice to point out to the teenagers. It said, and it's not just a desire or feeling, because a lot of times we mistake our feelings for love at that moment. A lot of times our feelings can be so strong that we think we love something, but really it's not love. So that's interesting. But all of them are different types of loves. That's why it's important to know that love is agape, meaning it's all-consuming. Love in this meaning is supreme in a committed love. So now that we know what love means, we have to understand the next word in that sentence. And the next word is heart. Well, how do we love the Lord God with all of your heart? What does heart mean in that thing? That means like 100%. What does it mean? We got to understand the word heart, and that means our heart is where our affections are. Our heart is where our affections are. And our affections guide us through life. For instance, when you get married, you will love your wife with all your heart. You love your husband with all your heart. That's because that's where our affections lie. To determine where our affections lie, we have to discern what occupies our time. All right, what motivates our actions and what shapes our aspirations and their reward. What shapes our time. Often I tell my teenagers, what you spend the most time doing is often the thing you love the most in your free time. And it's true. In my spare time, when I have free time and I'm not working or at church, what am I doing? If you give me an hour to do whatever it is, whatever I'm doing, odds are I'm going to be love doing what I'm doing. Whether that's reading a book, whether that's just going out, making fire. I love campfires, so odds are I love camping. So if I have a spare time, I'm probably making a fire somewhere. Why? Because I love doing it. There's something cool about being in nature, creating a fire. I love doing it, so that's what I do. The devotion of your heart is determined by where will you find value as the greatest treasure. In a couple of verses, it's Matthew 6:21 says, For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Wherever your treasure is, there your heart will also be. See, our hearts love what it treasures. And we can tell what you love by how much time you spend doing that thing. Whether that's watching TV, whether that's, Facebook, or hanging out with your friends or hanging out with family, whatever your treasure is, there will be. Like I know some parents that just love spending time, all their time with their kids. Why could they love them? You know, and I know some kids that love hanging out with their friends. Why could they love their friends? Any spare time, where my child at? They're next door with their best friend. Just like me and my cousin Nick, who I'm here to visit. I love spending time with him. I'm staying with him this week. When he's not working and I'm not doing anything, we're hanging out. Why? Because we love doing that. We get along perfectly. So how do we love God with all of our heart? We make him the greatest treasure. Paul understood this. And Paul, in the New Testament, he says it multiple times of how to love God with all of our heart. In Philippians 3:8, he said, I count all things but lost for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for who I have suffered the loss of all things, and do count them but dung, that I may win Christ. Paul had a very well-off life before he became a Christian. And anybody that knows his story knew he went from being high authority to literally spending a lot of his time in jail. You know, and he's like, it's all lost. Everything I had is lost. I'd rather have Jesus. So when Jesus says, love your God with all your heart, he is meaning that we have to treasure God above everything else. All right, treasure God above everything else. The next saying we're going to study is, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your soul. How do we love God with all of our soul? That's a hard one to answer because soul is a hard topic to talk about. Because a soul, we know we have a soul, but it's something like, it's not physical, like your heart. You actually know you have a heart, you know, but your soul, you're just like, that's what, you know, what is a soul? You know, it's a deep topic. All right, we love the Lord with all your soul by living a life of faithfulness to all that God has required of us. See, loving the Lord with all your heart has to do with affection. Loving the Lord with all your soul has to do with devotion. Affection, heart, devotion for soul. The soul is what defines who you are. The biblical definition of soul means life, personality, the inward self, or identity. I'll repeat that. The biblical definition of soul means life and personality, the inward self, and identity. Your soul is what makes you who you are. The soul is what makes you make the choices you make. Does that make sense? It often is. I say to my teenagers, for instance, like everybody hold like garbage in, garbage out. Why? It's because you're feeding your soul. When I'm often being tempted, or if I'm struggling with a certain sin, the more I read the Bible about that sin, or about something I'm struggling in, the more prone I am to fight that sin. Why? Because I'm feeding my soul with positivity. If I'm struggling with anger, if I open up Proverbs and I read about, you know, how to control your anger and read about how to tame your tongue, I'm very sarcastic, so I continually need to read about how to tame my tongue. Just because somebody says something sarcastic, I want to snap off and say something sarcastic back, but the Bible says don't do that. And I'm sitting there like, but it kills me. Do not.
So you have that problem too?
Yes, exactly. But that's my inner, that's my soul. And the more I feed my soul good stuff, the more I catch myself just letting things slide. I might think it in my mind, but instantly it's the, you know, Proverbs says, you know, I'm trying to think of some of the good ones. The last one I said wasn't the Proverb, it was Abraham Lincoln, so I'm trying not to think of. Abraham Lincoln had a great quote, it's better to be thoughtful than to open up your mouth and remove all doubt. That was loosely based off a proverb, though he got that on. But I quoted that exactly, and somebody called me out and said, Abraham Lincoln said that. That's not a Bible verse. And I'm like, no. So I always had to think logically through that before I spit that out. But it was something, Proverbs 13 or somewhere in like 20, but it's loosely based off a proverb. But it's because you need to be studying the Bible so it can affect your soul, your inner self. All right. The soul is the core of you. To love the Lord with all your soul means to love Him in the way we live our life, in the choices we make, and in the behavioral and lifestyle we adopt. John 14:15, it said, if you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me, keep my commandments. Love must be demonstrated, right? I mean, what's good is that you say, I love you, and then 2 seconds later, you catch that person openly talking bad about you. You know, if you have a friend, and you're like, man, I'm your best friend, and then you come around saying that person's been lying about you, and you're like, I thought you were my best friend. Man, you are my best friend. I just hate you. And you're like, wait, you can't do both. You can't be my best friend and hate me. You know what I'm saying? It's just like a person say, you're my best friend, and then he punches you. You're like, wait, like, you can't. Or I love you, and then punch you. You're like, that doesn't work out like that. You know, if you love me, you'll respect me. God is saying, if you love me, keep my commandments. It must be demonstrated. I mean, who believes someone who says they love you but never listens to what you say? When we keep His commandments, when we live every day by His word, we are expressing love for God. All right, and one of the last ones is mind. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy mind. The mind. The language of the mind is kind of like images. And isn't it funny how no matter what you do, you can't shut off your mind? Like, even though if you sit down, you can do the most mindless activity, and I like doing mindless activity when I'm home, when I just get off of work. I sit down in front of my TV and I just watch TV, and in my mind I'm not thinking. But I'm still thinking, regardless. No matter how much I try to shut it off, something will pop up randomly in my mind, and I'm just like, oh, don't want to think about that. Next topic. So your mind is always going. God created our minds in amazing ways. We are continually thinking or seeing images in your mind. Our minds even keep active while we're even sleeping. That's why we have dreams. Even if we don't remember it, we are still dreaming, which I don't know how that works. Only because I don't remember most of my dreams. So, but it just, to me, it's shocking we can have dreams and not remember it. All right, and there's 3 ways we can love the Lord with all of our mind, and they're really short and simple, and then we'll finish up. The first one is how we can love the Lord with all of our mind is by reason. First is to reason. Isaiah 1:18 said, come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be wool. To reason is to think and understand and form judgment by process of logic. That's what reason is. Reason is powerful. We can systematically and logically look at the ways God has intersected our lives and blessed us so we can give Him praise. If you notice, animals don't have reason. They can't reason. Animals, most of animals is the person who told me this didn't believe in God, and I was too young at the time to use it in support as a witness. But they were talking about how animals don't have souls. And they were like, you can yell at an animal, but if you sound like you're happy, you can say the meanest thing to it, and the animal's happy. But you can sound like the nicest human being to an animal and say the meanest thing to it. It's just, there's no reason. They can't interpret things. They can't logically think because they're an animal. They don't have a soul. We can logically, and we can have reason to powerfully and systematically look back at our lives and say, that was God. I can look back 5 years ago and look back now and be like, only God can get me where I am today. Only God got me through this. Only because of God, He did this. You know, because of God, I'm standing here and not somewhere else. You know, who knows? The second is knowledge. First is reason, second is knowledge. Hebrews 10:16 says, this is the covenant that I will make with you. Them after those days, saith the Lord, I will put my laws into their hearts and in their minds will I write them. Knowledge is another vital part of loving God with all your mind. We need to read the Bible so we can fill our minds with God. If we have no knowledge of God, how can we love Him? You can say that in any relationship ever in life. Friendship. You can't love your friend if you know nothing about him. You can't love your spouse if you know nothing about him. You can't. How can I say I love God if I don't know anything He says? You got to have knowledge of God. You got to know His word. You got to meditate it. You got to know it. That's plain and simple. It's just like, if when I went out to eat with a girlfriend and we go to the same place every Sunday or whatever, and she gets the same thing, it's a form of love that I actually notice those things, and I actually be like, hey, want to go here? You can get your chicken sandwich and fries and such. She'll be like, wow, you actually remember what I eat. Or, she's like, wow, you know my favorite place to eat. Or, if you're going shopping with them and hey, you know what? She likes that type of stuff. You probably like that shirt. Or she points, oh, I really like this t-shirt, or I really like this dress. And if you go there by yourself, I'm a guy, so a lot of times I'm dense. I miss simple stuff like that. Sometimes I get lucky and just trip over it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's just boom, right there. And I'm like, signed down from God saying, Ty, this is what you do. And you go buy that dress. That's a form of love. Like, wow, you actually know me. You actually took the time to study me, to get my little hints. It's the same way with God. He's like, you got to know him. Knowledge. The third and last one is memory. Isaiah 63:7 says, I will mention the loving kindness of the Lord and the praises of the Lord according to all that the Lord hath bestowed on us, and the great goodness toward the house of Israel, which he hath bestowed on them according to his mercies and according to the multitude of his loving kindness. I think I'm losing hair. Bunch of hair fell on my iPad there and I kind of had to brush it off. Anyways, my ADD moment, I just saw that and I'm like, oh man, that ain't good. When we use our minds to remember all the things God has done for us and his people, we can't help but be grateful to worship. Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things that are good, of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. So in conclusion, loving God means a fully committed love. Let me rephrase that. Loving God means a fully committed love. So we are supposed to be fully committed to God with your heart, which is making God the most important treasure, putting him before everything else. Then we got to love God with all your soul, and that means to love him in the way we are to live in every choice. Every choice we got to make them for him in our lifestyle. Then we got to love God with all of our mind, which is we got to use your reason, knowledge, and memory to get to know God more and to put God number one in our lives. All right, and that's about it. You want me to pray? All right. Thank you. I'll pray and then you can continue. All right, dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the people that showed up, Lord, and let me just said something out of your word tonight that impacted them, Lord, and just please thank you.